Have you ever been at a crossroads just wishing you had a clear roadmap for a huge life decision? Well, today we're diving into a devotional text that claims to offer exactly that. Let's break down its framework for finding what it calls divine direction. I mean, we've all been there, right? That feeling of standing at a fork in the road, totally overwhelmed by confusion, maybe a little bit of anxiety. It's a feeling we all know, and we've all wished for some kind of clear sign to just point us in the right direction. So, the devotional we're digging into today argues that there's a specific way to cut through all that noise. It's not about just, crossing your fingers and hoping for an answer. It's about following a clear path. So, let's unpack its core argument.
First things first, the text reframes the problem. It basically says, hey, feeling lost isn't some kind of personal failure. It's a shared struggle, this universal human dilemma of trying to find our way.
And the author really gets it. They start by just validating that feeling of being lost in a maze of confusion and anxiety. This emotional starting point, it's really the foundation for the entire argument that's going to follow.
So what's the root cause of all this confusion? Well, the devotional points a finger at one single culprit, leaning way too heavily on our own human logic.
And you can really see this stark contrast laid out here. On the left, you have the path of own understanding, which is just this spiral of confusion, mistakes, and stagnation. But on the right, you've got divine direction, and that leads to a totally different place, one of clarity, confidence, and purpose. The main message here is that these aren't just different routes, they lead to completely different outcomes.
Okay, so if relying on our own logic is the problem, then what's the alternative? The devotional proposes a really specific and what it calls powerful practice, something called word-strengthened prayer.
The whole entire argument really hinges on this one scripture from Proverbs. It's presented as a central command: trust a higher power more than your own intellect, and in return, you'll be shown a clear path.
So what exactly is word-strengthened prayer? It's not just about asking for help. The devotional defines it as a very specific practice. It's about rooting your prayers for guidance in the principles and truths that you find in Scripture.
And the benefits it claims are pretty significant. This isn't just about finding some peace of mind. The text argues this practice gives you actual divine insight. It lights up the path forward and can even help you spot potential obstacles. It's a big shift from just making a random request to having a strategic, guided conversation.
But this isn't all just theory. To really make its case, the author points to three major biblical figures as real-world examples of this whole principle in action.
The first case study is King Solomon. Now, when he asked for wisdom, it wasn't some generic plea. The text really highlights that his prayer was specifically grounded in the scriptural principles of justice and righteousness, the things you actually need to be a good leader. And that alignment, the author argues, is exactly what led to divine favor.
The second example is David. He's presented as someone who used Scripture like an anchor in the stormy seas of decision-making. This practice made sure his choices were lined up with a divine plan, not just swayed by his own feelings or ambitions at the time.
And finally, the devotional gives us its ultimate example, Jesus Christ. He's positioned as the perfect model of this practice, meditating on Scripture before key decisions to make absolutely sure every single action was aligned with a divine purpose.
So, how does the devotional connect these ancient stories to our lives right now, today? Well, it's all about moving from that initial place of anxiety to one of clear, purposeful action.
The text promises a really fundamental transformation. Following this framework is meant to turn uncertainty into action and confusion into clarity. But, the most significant shift, according to the author, is the one that takes you from that initial state of anxiety to a genuine place of peace.
And then the devotional boils this all down into a super practical call to action. It's a 4-step process. First, you pinpoint the decision you're facing. Second, you meditate on relevant scripture. Third, you pray, but you use those specific scriptures to guide you. And fourth, you trust that the clarity is going to come.
And that's pretty much the core framework from this devotional. It really leaves us with a broader question to think about. Beyond any one specific faith, what is the power of anchoring our biggest decisions in a foundational text? How could a practice like that change the way we navigate life's challenges? It's definitely something to think about.